Greetings, friends. You know the show, Actors Ra, Randy Cramer. How do you usually come in? How do you explain? Put it this way, like when did you realize there are back memories in your life when you had a second life? How did that all begin?
I would say that I started to experience them almost immediately after I returned from my tour of duty, but I didn't realize it for about a decade after that. So when I was about 27 years old for the second time around, that was when I started to realize, hey, there's something going on here, and there's some memories that are starting to come forward that I know, but I don't know that I know. And I mean, that was when it was really like more, I realized it was more than just flashes of random memory or flashes of things that I didn't have any context for. And I was like, okay, something's going on here. And that was about the time that I started to seriously pursue through my own meditative, metaphysical, spiritual practice to get to the bottom of whatever was going on. What I really wanted was the truth, whatever that was. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to know what the heck was going on, what was really happening there, where did it come from, because I wanted to make proper decisions about my life and what I should do going forward. And I felt like the only way that I could do that is if I had the accurate information and understood truthfully what was going on there. So about 27 years old, probably.
So isn't that like, because I have my own experience, like it's kind of schizophrenic in a way that you wake up and you had this strange dream, but it was like a memory recall running, and you see this entire storyline of something completely else that you did elsewhere, and you're like, okay, either the rational kicks in. So how was your fight with the rational and knowing there's actually something there that's dominant that wants to communicate?
Yeah. I certainly questioned my mental sanity for a number of years. Luckily, I had a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist, and I sat down with him one day and I was like, look, either I'm bonkers or there's some, repressed memories here. I kind of just want to know what the truth is. And he was awesome enough to say, well, let's pull out the book. And we pulled out the DSM-4, which was the DSM-4 at the time. They moved up to the DSM-5. And he was like, let's go through the diagnostics and look at the symptoms and look at the symptomology. And we went through all of the different disorders and eliminated all of them that I didn't have the symptomology for. And then when we got to post-traumatic stress disorder, it was like, yes. And I was like, okay, that pretty much explains that. So even according to the symptomology, the DSM-4, I didn't have any of the other personality disorders or any other mental illnesses. It was post-traumatic stress disorder. So from that point, we could at least proceed by saying, these are real memories, these are real experiences, let's figure it out from that point of view. So I was fortunate that I had not just someone who was smart, I had a bona fide friend who was a clinical psychiatrist who understood the ins and outs of it, and we went through the textbook and figured it out.
So do you think that when these other developed humans from other planets, I would say extraterrestrials, if you will, let that leak? Are they aware there will be leaks, that there's time, there will be a bridge where this will be a contact without having to slice time and bring people back? Do you think that they deliberately let that leak within you?
In my case, I think yes. Now, it took some time to understand what the whole big picture was, but once I got to a place of understanding that the big picture for me was that this was always the plan. The plan was always that I would finish my tour of duty, I would get my memories back, then I would start speaking to the general public, and we would go from there. I didn't know that on a conscious level, but apparently that was the plan. So it was intentional, definitely on their part from that perspective, to eventually that was going to happen. So it was planned. Yeah, in my case, it was definitely planned that there would be a time when I would start to remember more and more and more, and then I would get total recall, by my mid-30s.
So I'm also under the impression is that many of us experiencers are either super soldiers or they're testing us. Do you think that they do that to the entire human race? Because I have tests when I'm in other states. I had some tests like in Indiana Jones, going through a labyrinth, and they would see how would I react, what's my choice. and in the end this all dissolves like a hologram, and then like we were just checking you. So you think that's all of us, or there's a certain group that they do it?
I get those on a regular basis. I would say that it's not like everybody on the planet. I would say that anyone who's been selected for a program, whether that's a military program or an extraterrestrial program, that those people are under constant scrutiny and constant testing. That doesn't mean everybody. There's too many people in the population that would not qualify for the programs that we've been in, either as human beings or as extraterrestrials. So it's not everybody, but anybody who's in a program, you're going to get tested and going through testing programs on a regular basis. I get them all the time.
So also, are you aware of implants, and are we having implants for, like, one story I got for myself is that I have 2 implants for psychological thought processing, and it's being observed through me how my feeling mechanisms respond to how am I treated on this planet by any human who approaches me. And some are trackers. So what's your experience?
Yeah, no, I remember at different times having these experiences of engaging in experiences with people where it felt like there was a part of my brain that was calculating every individual response that I would get from another person, as if to go into another data source or another data set of statistical analysis. So every time I would interact with a person, that would go into a larger pool of data where they're entering every person's data who's experiencing with people, so that they're able to enter in the statistical analysis based on different people's behaviors, the way they respond to certain things, what they believe about certain things, that all of that is data that's being tracked and absorbed all the time by every time I shake someone's hand or have a conversation with someone.
Dolores Cannon said in one of her interviews that they can also, in a time lapse, they can trigger sedation if we need to relax, or they need us to be relaxed. Do you ever have those states where you like feel totally drowsy one day, as if you've taken, I don't know, Advil or whatever, but you haven't taken anything, you just have the effect within you?
Very specifically, I've had experiences where I've sat down in a chair to listen to a lecture or a presentation by someone, being completely wide awake and ready, and then like just suddenly like just drooping off and nodding and almost falling asleep in my chair, and then waking up and going, oh wait, what just happened? Did I miss that? As if it was something that maybe I wasn't supposed to hear, or to pollute, my memory stream with or something. But I've absolutely had that experience.
Also with accidents, they can remove us temporarily if they're not sure what's going to happen to the vessel. Yes. I had that happen to me when I was 13. I was run over by a car, and I felt like I was temporarily like like everything was slow motion. I saw myself in a weird abstract way in slow motion, and then everything came back. So we're not too traumatized. Do you think they have access?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're talking about what I would call standard advanced high technology, both by the military or extraterrestrials, that's completely within their scope.
So also an interesting question is, like you said, so I'm going to ask you these unusual questions.
Oh, please, I love unusual questions.
So it's like, we know you done a lie detector test.
I did. I have passed a polygraph, yes.
So is that a percentage of how high, or flying colors, or or is that...
I aced it. So they are statistically 98.5% effective, and I aced all the questions. There was no question that was asked of me that I was being deceptive or observed trying to administer countermeasures. So it was a completely aced the polygraph.
So let's go into timelines. People always say, well, if you were taken in time and lived somewhere for a long amount of time, in my perspective, it's not. They don't have to actually regress you, as in rejuvenate you. They can. I've seen that. I had contact at Mount Shasta. I can see they can cut out a piece, like let's say, like a plot of land, cut that out like a hologram. The observer can't see you being taken.
Right.
And they keep running a loop, you still standing in that street.
Oh.
It just runs a little bit longer. That's what I've observed.
Okay.
And they can take you, and let's say you've been gone for 10 or 20 years with that consciousness, and in that moment where that loop runs, they can slice under it. You're coming back 10 minutes before they took you. So how was your experience with when you were taken and brought back? So we can't see it here, but you have experienced it coming back.
In my experience, it was actually 15 minutes after I left.
So you were gone physically, completely?
Yeah, completely gone physically.
Okay.
And then, gone for a 30-year tour and then brought back for what they call an age regress, but it isn't an age regression. It actually puts you in a younger clone body that's the age when you left.
Yeah.
And then reinserted 15 minutes after I'd left so that there's no collision between the me that left and the me that was returning. So with that 15-minute time lapse, they can just reinsert me back into the timeline, put me back in my bed, and the me that was there before left 15 minutes before, so there's no interaction.
So that's interesting because they show that in movies, and I wonder why, like Harry Potter, when they dial back time,
right?
And Dumbledore gives them the time device and goes out the door, and the next minute, after like half a day trying to solve their dilemma, he runs into them, but he doesn't respond to them because he knows about the time delay interference.
Right.
That's very smart as a concept in a Hollywood movie.
Yes, I think that very few people probably picked up on that, but I remember seeing that and going, oh, that's very clever. He knew that the time loop was happening, so he knew to ignore...
Yeah, he was completely like non-reactive. It's so it's the parts that we see.
Yeah.
Like he just gives them the advice that they can go back in time and walks out in the same minute, runs into the three beings, and they're like, we went back, and keeps walking. Like, it's
well, he knows to turn to one side and gesture away in the other direction, so completely take their attention the other direction.
Yeah, so this time loop that they have interfered with to help themselves would make sense.
Which would mean that he had experienced that before he even gave them the time turner. So he knew it was going to happen before he gave them the time turner because he had experienced seeing them and going, oh, that must have been a time experience. Oh, I better tell them that they should use the time things because I already saw them travel through time. I mean, there's crazy.
But we can create an infinite fractal from that.
Right.
So, what's your experience with déjà vu?
What
does that mean to you?
So usually when I have an experience of déjà vu, it's because I had a dream or a meditative experience where I saw the event before, but I didn't, like, oh, gee, that's an interesting thing. Where does that come from? But then when you're living through it, I go, oh, this is that time that I remembered that dream or that meditative experience, and then I go, oh, déjà vu. But that's really just like connecting something that I saw was going to happen, and then being in the moment when it happens, and you realize, oh, this is that moment that I had that memory or that meditative experience of however many months, or in some cases even years before, and then it clicks in, oh, wait, I've been here before, or I think I've been here before. Oh, I remember I had a dream, or I was meditating, and I saw this flash of this event. And to me, that's a sign that I'm on the right track. Like I'm going in the right direction. I'm making the right choices because I'm connecting to something that I saw way, way back when. So that tells me that I'm on the right timeline when that happens to me.
Have you seen The Adjustment Bureau?
Yes.
A very interesting movie, which my viewers, you should watch that if you haven't watched that. It shows timelines, and they calculate, and these people are in part responsible for coincidence and things and timelines that take place. So my take, and I want to see how you feel, is sometimes I feel when we are computing at a higher level, as in our brain is in a higher state of awareness that can go from alpha to gamma. Gamma is like 40 hertz. The shamans in the Amazon they study gamma. They talk to the spirits, they see the ETs that they follow on. So do you think that when we neuronically fire faster than the average human mind or channel, that we can see echoes of an unfolding timeline? That we can see it holographically, thought-wise, shimmering. That's why we're very good at guessing at that point.
Yes, I teach my students in my psionics class that when you're operating in sort of your beta brain, that's your conscious mind, that your subconscious mind or your superconscious mind is several hundred IQ points higher than your conscious mind. So when you're experiencing in those states of your sub or your superconscious, you're in your superbrain. And when you're in your superbrain, oh my goodness, you're able to calculate, see things that are way beyond what you think would be your intellectual capacity to do that. So yeah, that.
So you think Da Vinci was in a state like that, like pre-projecting devices that by like here's the amazing part. He is the inventor of the floodgates, like with the leveling riverbeds.
Right.
He drew the schematic out. No one has built that at the time.
Right.
Like the first people 2,000 years later were the French who said, okay, let's try it and put it to the test. And these floodgates mechanisms work seamless.
Right. I think there's evidence in Da Vinci's case. There's a 2-year time period in his life where he was, the time before that, where he was basically a painter. That was, all he was known.
And then he comes back with all of these skills.
And then then there's no record of him for 2 years. Like, he wasn't living somewhere, paying rent somewhere, wasn't painting anything, wasn't writing anything, and then returned, and then all of a sudden had all these amazing ideas. I think there's evidence that he may have either experienced a jump forward in time and experienced seeing all of these things, or maybe even been taken aboard a ship by extraterrestrials who showed him these things, so that when he came back he had all these ideas and tried to take all of these advanced things that he was seeing, like helicopters and parachutes and machine guns,
tanks.
Yeah,
and before the tank was even 1,000 years before that was even invented.
Yeah. And then just trying to translate all of that into a 15th century technology mindset, and drawing out just paid book and after book of sketches and drawings, trying to understand that. There's an interesting section of pages in one of his books where he draws these pictures of these figures that are referred to as the ugly heads, and they have these very large,
contorted,
big, sort of contorted faces, big heads with big hats on them. There's some indication that that's some attempt to recollect probably an extraterrestrial life form of some kind. So I think there's evidence that we can look at in his lifetime that says there was a period of time where he was gone, went somewhere, either traveled through time or was taken aboard a ship by extraterrestrials who showed him these things, and then all of a sudden he returned with all of this stuff in his memory. And at that point he just felt the obsessive need to draw and write it down and try and hand it to people. I've heard scientists, like real physicists and engineers, say that if we had implemented Da Vinci's ideas at the time, instead of waiting several centuries in some cases, we could have had rocket ships on the moon in the 17th century, in the 1700s. So he was definitely centuries ahead of his time with the ideas that he was trying to contemplate. And some of the things he even built at the time were just astounding by the standard of the day.
I mean, hydraulics, these spinning choppers, and
the clockwork lion, which is basically a metal lion with a clockwork device that could wind up and it would walk, and its mouth would open and it would roar. I mean,
like the first basically robot.
Like the first automaton. Yeah, absolutely.
And they rebuilt it. I've seen the documentary. It's amazing.
Yes.
So let's go to when people say you have traveled, you have this experience, now we have the evidence of the lie detector test. I'm always, when I wake up on ships, I always make it my point, like, what is it of knowledge that I can bring back,
right? So
I actually have something physical that I can actually recreate to show people that this is actually like I'm doing my keys. All this stuff is I'm channeling back from future events to make stuff tangible. So my question is a two-part question. One is, why is it so hard to retain the knowledge that they give you? You feel like you get 100,000 things and you bring back 5%.
Right.
Why is it so hard to bring it into this realm?
Right.
And what have you brought with you that you can actually, in the near future, actually can build? I heard you mentioning the holographic medbed.
Right.
I have a similar idea, but I'll share that with you once I hear your idea, because yours will be electricity based.
Yeah,
and I'm talking photonically based.
Interesting.
So we will share that in a minute. So the first part is like, why is it so complicated? That sometimes you hear the craziest formula, and I don't know. I had one when they told me when the humans learn to look at the reservoir of the atom, they will stop splitting it.
Right.
And they have infinite energy because there's a reservoir of infinite energy that's within that. I have no idea in what formula to translate that.
Right.
That's the fragment I brought back. Why is this so hard?
That is because of the alpha bridge. So the alpha bridge is your... So if you draw a chart of the brainwave patterns that your brain is making, you have the beta part, which is we call it the conscious brain. You have this alpha part, which we think of as this relaxed,
It's like 7 to 10 hertz.
Alpha is like 13 to 18, I think. And then you get down into your theta range, which is where you're really in your super brain, your super conscious brain. Well, the alpha bridge it creates this bubble when you look at the brain waves on a meter.
Yeah.
And if that bubble is wide open, you have a free flow of that information from the theta range, from the subconscious range, back up to the conscious and so forth. When the alpha bridge is very small, it restricts, and so you may be down in this meditative state or a dream state or a hyper-conscious state, and you're like, oh, I've got all the information. But the minute you come back up to that conscious state, your alpha bridge is restricting that flow of information. You're like, oh, why can't I remember all of that? It's because of alpha bridge, what we call the alpha bridge restriction. So what we teach is how to, through a daily meditative practice, keep pushing and pushing and holding that alpha bridge so that you can hold it. And then what shows up on these patterns is a little bubble, which we call the alpha bridge. And when you have a consistent bubble in your alpha bridge, then you have more free flow of that information from the superconscious to the conscious states.
But it explains, science has also found out there's a correlation between the alpha and the theta. When they synchronize, you have somewhat of a halo. You're creating a circuitry. And that's where this extra dimensional knowledge and these things come in.
Yeah, you can't get to one without the other. Like, you can't get to your theta state without opening that alpha bridge and creating that opening. You can't get the information back without opening that alpha bridge. So the fact that they have to work in concert together is absolutely true.
Yeah, so I'm working with that. I bought a machine that's a photo modulation for the alpha. You put it on your head and you have these diodes. And you have a nose clip that shoots infrared inside.
Okay,
and it brings the alpha up, training that. And I realized with training that, like you said, and then that actually completes the picture of my investigation, when you stabilize the alpha and you have healthy alpha levels, the accessibility of information is much, much better. It's much more flowing. And you can hold or super focus for a very long time when you have good alpha levels.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's some amazing technologies that you're describing that can help do that. The simplest thing that anybody can do if they want to open up their alpha bridge is actually just close your eyes and visualize the deepest color blue that you can. By visualizing that color blue, your alpha bridge will open up. We've seen it happen.
See, I love the color blue. Interestingly, that you mentioned that, because I was 10 years ago doing a vision quest, and when I opened up in that realm, I was in this plasmic deep hue blue, but I felt completely like all-knowing, all-present, and I felt like I don't want to be disturbed by anything right now, and I kept my eyes closed, and I saw this. It's like a light, but it's not defined like in one spot. It's like this emanating in this galactic plasmic blue that I was in. So that gives me actually the inspiration and the download to go back there to meditate on that color. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, whatever. We often describe to people, envision the deepest ocean blue or the deepest sky blue color that you can, and focus on that, and it will make more alpha waves just by visualizing the color blue.
So also blue sky, you have people more or less better, even if it's not the optimum, better alpha states than living in a cold region where it's overcast all the time.
Oh yeah, people who have access to blue sky all the time or blue ocean all the time, it's going to increase their alpha waves, just opening them up for sure. There have been some studies that show certain types of blue light can do the same. Like there's these little, square blue light emitters that can do the same thing by just increasing that alpha. If you had a room in your house that you wanted to paint that color, that kind of deep azure blue color, it would probably do the same thing.
So, is it a certain type of blue?
It's a deep blue, so not like a light blue or a powder blue, but more like
this,
more like my shirt than your shirt.
Okay, so you're more alpha.
I'm more alpha.
You're more alpha. So back to your adventures. So when you were taken, was it like a classic way that you all of a sudden you wake up in another reality, or you were in a ship and you're being transported to mission, to base? What planets were involved? Just give me something.
Oh no, it was so part of the training process before my deployment was I would wake up in my bed in the middle of the night. Door would open in the wall. It's like a jump gate or a wormhole door. 2 technicians would come through and would escort me through the gate. So it was pretty standard fare for me.
So they can come into reality and set a portal in your wall, and have that as a concept to move you. I find it interesting because I've experienced like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without being so military, where just a gateway opens in my wall, and they used a toy, and it spoke through the toy.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I wasn't that scared as a child, and I held the toy, and that toy would talk, but it was actually them.
Right.
Later on, recalibrating regressive hypnotherapy, I found out, okay, this is how they actually make contact. So it's like they make that, I'm thinking, the portal in the wall, so for you to conceptualize that you're being taken, it's easier to process that way.
Well, in my case, that was actually what was happening. So, I mean, this was a very physical technology being operated by the military. It was something that I did on a regular basis. So when I was went for my deployment, it was not an unusual thing. I knew what the process was. I knew what was happening. I just presumed we were going on another training exercise instead of to a deployment to an induction center where it was anybody who's ever joined the military, they go to an induction center, you get a physical exam, you sign a contract, you get a brief psych eval, and then they hand you a packet and then put you on a bus or a plane and send you off to your deployment. Same thing, it was just instead of being sent to a deployment center, an induction center here on Earth, it was to a center on Lunar Operations Command on the backside of the moon. Got a physical exam, got a psych eval, signed the contract, got a packet, and then got put on a transport ship that then also went through another jump gate to get to Mars, so the trip itself only took a few minutes instead of having to actually fly there the whole distance. It was a very
which is portrayed in the movie Doom.
Right.
Then it goes wrong.
Right, yeah, they got the jump gates.
The jump gates from ancient builders,
right?
But something gets in. I mean, I wonder why the propaganda always has to be so negative.
There's just a certain mentality among certain agencies to scare people from the technology, to keep them from seeking it out, developing it, or wanting to have anything to do with it. So it's a kind of like, if you wanted people to stay away from a dangerous place, you put up a sign with red on it. You say, "Don't go near this; it's dangerous." That's a way of putting another signal into people's brain that says, "Stay away from this; it's dangerous." So it's just kind of trying to keep the lower intelligences away from certain places or certain technologies.
Okay, so that is in part to protect us.
I think it is in some ways. A lot of people presume it's to lock us into some sort of prison thing. Not really. There's a lot of people that would do themselves a tremendous amount of harm if they were to attempt to understand or deploy these technologies in a way that they were not ready for or ready for the consequences for. So in some ways it is to protect civilians from hurting themselves or hurting other people.
So I wonder how the people that took you work with that. When I read the Keys of Enoch, and I compared notes of the Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertak and other notes from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, is that the adept or the trainee has to have certain spiritual algorithms set in his mind state, and if they're not up to par, it's like you're 5 years old trying to drive a racing car, and that would backfire or fry you. So even in ancient Egypt, not everybody was allowed in the main chamber when it was active, because it would literally toss you to bits.